The old space station floated in the darkness like a piece of forgotten trash. Captain Jake Morrison looked at it through his ship's window and frowned. The station was damaged badly, with holes in its metal walls and burn marks everywhere. It had been sending out a distress signal for 3 months, but nobody had come to help. Jake was the captain of the Wanderer, a small exploration ship that traveled through space looking for new things. His crew was small but good at their jobs. Lisa Chen was his science officer, a smart woman who knew everything about aliens and planets. Danny Hayes and Michelle Carter were his security team, both tough and ready for anything. "Captain, I'm reading something strange," Lisa said from her station. She was looking at her computer screen with worried eyes. "There's no sign of the aliens who built this station, but something is alive in there." Jake nodded and made his decision quickly. "We're going in. Get the team ready." 20 minutes later, Jake and his crew walked through the broken station. Their boots made loud sounds on the metal floor. The lights were barely working, making everything look scary and dark. The walls had deep scratches on them like something big and angry had clawed at them. "Whatever made these marks was huge," Danny said quietly, holding his weapon tight. They followed Lisa's scanner deeper into the station. They passed empty rooms and broken equipment. Finally, they reached a heavy door with alien writing on it. The words were in the Krillian language, warnings that said danger was inside. Michelle worked on the door controls until it opened with a loud noise. The room inside was dark and cold. When their lights shined into it, they all stopped and stared. A massive creature lay chained to the far wall. It was as big as a bear, with 6 legs and black fur that seemed to drink in the light. Its head looked like a mix between a wolf and a big cat, with glowing amber eyes that watched them carefully. Metal parts were attached to its head and back, blinking with small lights. But the worst part was how terrible the creature looked. Its fur was dirty and stuck together with old blood. Its ribs showed through its skin because it was so thin. A metal collar around its neck blinked red. The creature was too weak to even stand up. "That's a Vorkan," Lisa whispered in shock. Jake had heard stories about Vorkans. They were war animals made by the Krillian aliens a long time ago. The Krillians had used them as soldiers in battles across space. Vorkans were smart, loyal, and deadly fighters. But when the Krillians left this part of space suddenly, they had abandoned their Vorkans everywhere, leaving them to die alone. The Vorkan's eyes met Jake's. In those eyes, Jake didn't see anger or hate. He saw hope, broken and desperate, but still there. "We're taking it with us," Jake said firmly. "Captain, that thing is a weapon," Danny argued. "The rules say we should report it and leave." "I don't care about the rules," Jake said, his voice hard. "Look at it, Danny. They left it here to die. Alone in the dark, starving, scared. We're not leaving anyone behind." Jake walked slowly toward the Vorkan with his hands up to show he meant no harm. The creature flinched when he got close but didn't try to attack. Up close, Jake could see the collar was a control device meant to hurt the Vorkan and make it obey. The battery was almost dead, but it still worked enough to cause pain. Lisa came over and started working on the collar. Her fingers moved fast over the alien technology. The Vorkan stayed very still, like it understood they were trying to help. "It's badly hurt," Michelle said, running her medical scanner over the creature. "It hasn't eaten in weeks, has many wounds, and has been shocked by that collar many times. I don't know how it's still alive." When the collar finally came off and fell to the floor, the Vorkan made a low sound that might have been relief. Jake carefully unlocked the chains. The huge creature fell forward, too tired to move anymore. "Get a stretcher," Jake ordered. "We're bringing it to the ship." Jake knelt down next to the Vorkan's head. Those amber eyes found his again, and this time he saw something new in them. Gratitude. "You're safe now," Jake said softly. "Nobody is going to hurt you anymore." The Vorkan's tail moved just a little bit, like it was trying to say thank you. Getting the massive creature back to the Wanderer took a long time. They had to change the medical room to fit such a big animal. Pete Hamilton, the ship's doctor, had never treated anything like a Vorkan before. But he got to work right away. Jake stood at the window and watched as Pete and his team cleaned the wounds, gave the Vorkan water through tubes, and checked for broken bones inside. The Vorkan had fallen asleep during the trip back, its huge body finally able to rest. Lisa came and stood next to Jake at the window. "Command is not going to be happy about this." "Command can complain all they want," Jake replied. "That creature in there fought in a war. It bled and probably saved lives. And when the war ended, they threw it away like garbage. He shook his head. If we can't be better than that, what's the point of exploring space? Do you think it will live? Jake watched the Vorkan's chest move up and down as it breathed. I think it's already survived more than anyone should have to. Now it's our turn to help. The ship's doctor worked for hours. He stitched wounds, set broken ribs, and pumped nutrients into the Vorkan's body. The creature was strong, Pete said. Vorkans were built to survive terrible things, but this one had been through hell. Jake visited the medical room every few hours to check on their new passenger. The crew was nervous about having a Krillian war beast on board. They had heard the stories about how dangerous Vorkans could be in battle, but Jake had made his decision and his crew trusted him. On the second day, Pete gave Jake some good news. It's going to make it. The Vorkan is responding to treatment. Its body is healing. Jake felt relief wash over him. That's great news, Pete. There's something else, Pete said. I've been studying its cybernetics. Those implants in its head and spine aren't just weapons. They're also medical devices and communication systems. This Vorkan was valuable to whoever owned it, which makes what they did even worse. That night, Jake sat in his quarters and thought about what they had found. The Vorkan had been a soldier, maybe even a hero in the Krillian military. It had fought and bled for aliens who then abandoned it without a second thought. But now it was safe. Now it had a chance to heal, to rest, to maybe even trust again. Jake decided he would do everything in his power to help the Vorkan recover, not because it was a powerful weapon or because it might be useful, but because it was a living being who deserved kindness after so much pain. He didn't know it yet, but this decision would change everything. For him, for his crew, and for the Vorkan who would soon wake up in a world very different from the one it had known. The war beast was about to learn that not all creatures with two legs were cruel, that some of them believed in mercy and second chances, in doing what was right even when it was hard. And Jake was about to learn that the strongest bonds in the universe could form in the most unexpected places, between the most unlikely friends. 3 days after the rescue, the Vorkan opened its eyes for the first time. The Vorkan woke up slowly like someone climbing out of a deep hole. Its amber eyes opened and looked around the medical room with confusion. Everything was clean and white, nothing like the dark cell where it had been left to die. Jake was there when it happened. He had been visiting the medical room every day, sometimes just sitting and watching the creature sleep. When those golden eyes focused on him, Jake smiled and spoke softly. Hey there, welcome back. You're on my ship. You're safe here. The Vorkan's ears turned toward Jake's voice. It tried to lift its head but was too weak. Pete hurried over to check the monitors and smiled. Vitals are good. It's going to be okay, Captain. Over the next few days, Jake visited often. He would sit in a chair near the medical bay's clear wall and just talk. Sometimes he talked about the ship and the crew. Sometimes he talked about space and the stars they had seen. Sometimes he just read from books on his datapad. The Vorkan watched him during these visits. Its eyes followed Jake's movements and its ears would perk up when Jake said certain words. Jake could tell the creature was smart, much smarter than a regular animal. Lisa had been studying everything she could find about Vorkans. She learned that they were not just dumb beasts. Vorkans could understand many languages and were as smart as humans. They had been soldiers and companions to the Krillians for hundreds of years, but they had also been treated like property. The Krillians controlled them with pain collars and strict training. Lisa couldn't imagine what that had done to their minds and hearts. I've been thinking about a name, Jake said one day, sitting in his usual chair. Can't keep calling you the Vorkan. How about Rex? It's simple and easy to remember. The Vorkan tilted its head to the side, a gesture that looked curious. Days passed, and something wonderful started to happen. The Vorkan began to respond to Jake. When Jake entered the room, the creature would shift its position to get closer to the clear wall between them. Its tail would move slightly when Jake spoke in a happy voice. On the 8th day, when Jake arrived with his morning coffee, Rex made a sound. It wasn't a growl or a snarl. It was a low, questioning rumble that sounded almost friendly. Yeah, I'm here, Jake said with a big smile. Good morning to you too, Rex. Pete was amazed by how fast Rex was healing. I've never seen anything like it, he told Jake. Most animals this hurt would be mean or scared of everyone, but Rex seems to want to trust you. Maybe he's tired of being alone, Jake said quietly. The real change happened on the 10th day. Jake arrived to find Rex standing up on all 6 legs. The Vorkan's wounds had healed well and his black fur was shiny and clean again. He looked strong and healthy. Jake made a decision. Pete, lower the wall. Captain, I'm not sure that's safe. Lower it halfway. I need to try something. The clear wall slid down until it was about waist high. Jake slowly reached his hand over it, palm down, the way someone might approach a nervous dog. Rex watched him for a long moment. Then very carefully the huge Vorkan walked forward. He lowered his massive head and gently touched his nose to Jake's hand. The touch sent shivers through Jake. Rex's breath was warm, and up close, Jake could see all the details of the metal implants in the Vorkan's head. But what struck Jake most was how gentle Rex was being. This creature who was built for war was choosing to be soft and kind. Good boy, Jake whispered, scratching behind one of Rex's ears. Good boy, Rex. Rex's tail started to wag, moving back and forth in a way that showed he was happy. From that day on, everything changed. Jake spent hours in the medical bay with Rex. Pete cleared a bigger space where Rex could walk around and stretch his legs. The crew was nervous at first about having a war beast on the ship, but Rex's gentle behavior around Jake made them relax. Lisa discovered that Vorkans could understand Galactic Standard Language, the common tongue that most space travelers used. She started using it when talking to Rex, and the Vorkan would respond with body language that showed he understood every word. He understands everything we say, Lisa told Jake one evening. Vorkans were made to follow complex battle orders. They're really smart. The Krillians just never treated them as equals. Jake watched Rex carefully play with a puzzle toy that Pete had made. The Vorkan's paws were surprisingly skilled, working the pieces with focus and intelligence. They made a big mistake. Rex isn't a weapon, he's a person. Soon the ship was approaching Frontier Station, a human outpost in deep space. Jake knew he would have to report Rex and answer questions about keeping a Krillian war beast on a civilian ship. The night before they arrived at the station, Jake sat with Rex in the medical bay. The Vorkan had grown stronger every day, and now he moved with grace and power. But he always stayed close to Jake, like the human was his anchor in a confusing world. Tomorrow is going to be hard, Jake said, scratching under Rex's chin. Rex leaned into the touch, his eyes half closed. There will be people who don't understand, who think you're dangerous. Rex made a soft rumbling sound and placed one of his big paws on Jake's knee. But I won't let anything bad happen to you, Jake continued. You've been through enough. From now on, you're part of this crew, part of this family. I promise. Rex looked at him with those intelligent amber eyes. Jake was sure he saw understanding there, and more than that, he saw trust. When the Wanderer docked at Frontier Station the next morning, Jake went to meet with Commander Helen Price. She was in charge of the station. Lisa went with him while Rex stayed on the ship with Pete watching over him. Commander Price listened to Jake's full report. When he finished, she leaned back in her chair and studied him with serious eyes. You know the rules about Krillian weapons, she said. I know that Rex is a living being who was left to die, Jake said firmly, and I know that humans have always said we're better than those who treat life as garbage. Helen's face softened a bit. I've read your report, Captain Morrison. I've seen the medical files too. What they did to that Vorkan is terrible. She paused. But I have to think about the safety of this station and everyone on it. Then come meet him, Jake said. See for yourself what kind of person he is. An hour later, Helen stood in the Wanderer's medical bay. She watched as Rex lay calmly while Pete did a checkup. The huge Vorkan noticed the stranger but didn't act mean or scared. He just watched her with calm curiosity. May I touch him? Helen asked. Jake nodded and called Rex over. The Vorkan stood up and walked across the bay with smooth movements. He stopped in front of Helen, who slowly reached out her hand like Jake had taught her. Rex sniffed her hand carefully, then pressed his nose against her palm in a friendly gesture. Amazing, Helen breathed. She looked at Jake. You've done something special here, Captain. Rex did the hard part, Jake replied. He chose to trust again even after everything that happened to him. Helen spent more time with them, asking questions and reading all the information Lisa had gathered about Vorkan behavior and abilities. Finally, she made her choice. I'm going to approve Rex as a member of your crew, she said, but there are rules. He needs regular checkups to make sure he's doing well mentally. If there's any sign of aggression or problems, we'll have to talk about this again. Understood, Jake said, feeling relief flood through him. And Captain, write down everything that happens. If this works, if Rex can live peacefully with humans, it could change how we help other abandoned Vorkans. There are probably hundreds of them out there, left behind by the Krillians. They deserve better than what they got. After Helen left the ship, Jake knelt down and hugged Rex around his thick neck. You hear that, boy? You're officially part of the crew now. Rex's tail wagged hard, and he made that low, happy rumbling sound that Jake loved. The Wanderer stayed at Frontier Station for a week. During that time, Rex became famous. People from other ships would come to meet the legendary Vorkan, and everyone was surprised by how gentle he was. Children from the civilian area of the station were especially interested. With adults watching carefully, Jake let small groups visit Rex. The huge Vorkan was patient with them, letting them pet his fur and ask questions. One little girl asked if she could hug him. Rex lowered himself to the ground and let her, his tail wagging slowly as she wrapped her small arms around his neck. He's so soft, she said with a big smile. He is, Jake agreed, his heart full of happiness, but not everyone was happy. Some people worried about keeping a war beast around regular people. They said Rex should be sent to a military base where he could be locked up and studied. Jake fought against these ideas with everything he had. Rex isn't a science experiment, he told anyone who would listen. He's a survivor, and he deserves to live in peace. In the end, most people sided with Jake. They had seen how gentle Rex was. They had watched the bond between the Vorkan and his human friends. They understood that sometimes kindness matters more than rules. When the Wanderer left Frontier Station, Rex stood next to Jake on the observation deck. They watched the stars streak past as the ship jumped to faster-than-light travel. In the window's reflection, Jake could see a creature at peace, no longer the broken, abandoned warrior they had found in that dark cell. Ready for the next adventure, boy? Jake asked, resting his hand on Rex's shoulder. Rex turned his head and licked Jake's hand, then looked back at the stars. 3 months had passed since Rex joined the crew of the Wanderer. The big Vorkan had become part of daily life on the ship. He had his own room now, a converted storage area that Pete had helped make comfortable with soft bedding. But most of the time, Rex could be found on the bridge or in the common areas, his presence bringing comfort to everyone. The ship was exploring the Epsilon Reach, a part of space known for old ruins and planets nobody had visited before. Jake stood on the bridge looking at survey data with Lisa. Rex lay nearby, his 6 legs tucked under him as he rested. Captain, I'm picking up a distress signal, said Kevin Brooks, the communications officer. He was a young man with quick fingers on the controls. It's on an old military frequency. A Krillian one. Jake's attention snapped to the screen. How far away? 2 hours if we go at current speed. The signal is weak and keeps cutting out. Next to Jake, Rex had woken up when he heard the word Krillian. The Vorkan stood up quickly, his ears pointed forward and his body tense. Set a course, Jake ordered. Rex, you okay, buddy? The Vorkan's amber eyes were locked on the view screen. A low growl rumbled in his chest. Whatever that signal meant, it clearly upset him. They found the source on a small moon that orbited a gas giant planet. A Krillian transport ship lay half buried in the lunar surface. Its hull had multiple holes torn in it. The crash looked recent, maybe only a few days old. The away team got ready with extra care this time. Jake, Lisa, Danny, and Michelle prepared for possible danger. But Jake insisted that Rex come along. He knows Krillians better than any of us, Jake explained. And if there are survivors, having Rex with us might help with talking to them. They found the Krillians in what was left of the ship's emergency shelter. There were 3 of them. 2 looked like soldiers and 1 appeared to be a technical worker. They were in bad shape, breathing hard in the thin air that leaked through the failing life support system. When they saw the humans, the Krillians raised their weapons. Their forearms moved with skill even though they were weak. But then they saw Rex. The lead Krillian had blue-gray skin marked with military tattoos. He made a sharp hand gesture and spoke in the rough Krillian language. Rex responded with a series of growls and body movements that Jake realized was communication between them. What are they saying? Jake asked quietly. Lisa was recording everything. I'm not sure exactly, but Rex seems to be talking for us. The conversation went on for several minutes. Then slowly the Krillians lowered their weapons. The lead warrior looked at Jake and spoke in broken Galactic Standard language. The Vorkan says you saved him. That you are honorable. We found him abandoned on a station, Jake said carefully. We couldn't leave him there to die. Something like shame passed over the Krillian's face. The Great Retreat was chaotic. Many decisions were made that brought dishonor to our people. We can help you, Jake offered. We can give you medical treatment and contact your people. Why would humans help Krillians? The warrior asked with suspicion in his voice. Because it's the right thing to do, Jake said simply. Same reason we helped Rex. The Krillians agreed to accept rescue, though they stayed cautious and watchful. As they were brought back to the Wanderer, Jake noticed Rex staying close to the injured aliens. His body language was protective despite whatever history existed between them. Once on the ship, Pete and his medical team worked to help the Krillians. Their biology was different enough from humans that treatment was difficult. But Pete had experience with alien bodies. The warrior who had spoken before, whose name was Krell, watched Rex with an expression Jake couldn't read. I must speak with the Vorkon, Krell said after his wounds had been treated. Alone. Jake looked at Rex, who met his eyes and then nodded in a very human way. All right, but I'll be right outside the door. Through the medical bay's observation window, Jake watched as Krell and Rex faced each other. The Krillian warrior was huge, even for his species, towering over most humans. But Rex was nearly as large, and there was no fear or submission in the Vorkon's posture. Krell spoke in Krillian, moving his 4 arms as he talked. Rex responded with growls and movements. The conversation became intense, and for a moment Jake got ready to rush in. But then something changed. Krell's aggressive stance softened, and he reached out with one hand, placing it on Rex's head in what looked like a gesture of respect or regret. When the conversation ended, Krell called for Jake. The Krillian warrior looked older somehow, more tired. The Vorkon tells me his name is Rex now, a human name. Krell's voice was heavy with emotion. I knew this Vorkon in the war. He was one of our finest warriors. His designation in the pack was Dusk Runner. What happened? Jake asked. Why was he abandoned? Krell was silent for a long time. The Krillian Empire was dying. A plague, a sickness our scientists could not cure. It spread through our worlds like fire, killing millions. We had to retreat, to quarantine ourselves and hope to survive. The leadership decided we could not bring the Vorkons home. They said the Vorkons might carry the disease and spread it to more of our people. That's not a reason. That's an excuse, Jake said, feeling anger rise in his chest. You are correct, Krell agreed quietly. It was cowardice dressed up as necessity. The Vorkons served us with perfect loyalty for generations, and we repaid them with abandonment. He looked at Rex. Dusk Runner, now Rex, should hate me, should hate all Krillians. But he spoke on our behalf. He convinced you to save us. Jake looked at Rex, who stood calmly beside him. Rex is a better person than most. He chose mercy over revenge. Humans are strange, Krell said. You rescued a Vorkon war beast that could have killed you. You rescued Krillians, your former enemies. Why? Because the war is over, Jake replied. And because we judge individuals by their actions, not their species. Rex earned our trust by being himself. You earned a chance by laying down your weapons when he asked. Over the next few days, as the Wanderer carried the Krillians to a neutral trading station, Jake watched something unexpected happen. Rex and Krell spent hours together, communicating in ways Jake couldn't fully understand. There was history between them, both painful and meaningful. On their last night aboard, Krell asked to speak with Jake and Rex together. I have contacted my people, the Krillian said. The plague has passed. Our population is smaller, but we survive. I told them about finding Dusk Runner, about what humans did for him. There are others like him scattered across the galaxy. Vorkons abandoned on 100 different worlds, left to die or survive as best they could. What did your people say? Jake asked. They are ashamed, as they should be. But shame is not enough. Krell turned to Rex. I cannot undo what was done to you and your pack, but I will spend my life trying to make it right. I will find the others. I will bring them home or find them new homes with those who will treat them with honor. Rex made a low sound and pressed his head against Krell's chest. The Krillian warrior wrapped 2 of his arms around the Vorkon. Jake saw tears in the alien's eyes. You are proof that bonds made in war can survive even betrayal, Krell said to Rex. And you humans are proof that there is still honor in this galaxy. When they dropped the Krillians at the trading station, Krell made a formal promise in front of witnesses. He would dedicate his life to finding and rescuing abandoned Vorkons. It was a small thing compared to what had been done, but it was a start. As the Wanderer prepared to leave, Jake found Rex on the observation deck, staring out at the stars. "You did a good thing," Jake said, sitting beside the massive Vorkan. "You could have let them die. Nobody would have blamed you." Rex turned his amber eyes to Jake and made a questioning sound. "Why did you speak up for them?" Jake asked. Rex's response was to place one large paw on Jake's hand, then look back out at the stars. The gesture seemed to say that Jake had taught him to be merciful. Jake smiled and scratched behind Rex's ears. "You're a better person than you know, buddy." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars go by. The Vorkan who had been abandoned had chosen forgiveness over hate. And in doing so, he had planted the seeds of redemption for an entire species. News about Rex and the rescued Krillians spread through human space and beyond. The story touched something deep in people. It reminded them that even in the huge darkness of space, kindness could bridge the widest gaps between different species. Offers came from across the galaxy. Scientists wanted to study Rex. Military advisors wanted to ask him about Vorkan psychology. Media outlets wanted to tell his story. Jake refused them all. "Rex isn't a curiosity or a symbol," he told anyone who asked. "He's my friend. He's part of this crew, and he deserves to live his life in peace." But Rex himself seemed to understand that he had become more than just one rescued Vorkan. When Krell sent a message 3 weeks later saying he had found 7 abandoned Vorkans on a frontier world, Rex insisted on being part of the rescue mission. Jake couldn't say no. Together, the Wanderer and a small Krillian vessel traveled to the world where the Vorkans had been found. They were in terrible condition, starving and scared, attacked by local predators and barely holding on to life. But when they saw Rex, strong and healthy, standing beside humans and Krillians working together, something changed in their eyes. Hope as fragile as a candle flame came to life. The Wanderer had been traveling for 6 months since finding Rex. The ship's mission had changed. While they still explored new star systems and studied planets, most of their time now went to what Jake called the Rescue Initiative. Thanks to Krell's network and growing cooperation between humans and reformed Krillians, they had located and saved 43 abandoned Vorkans. Each rescue was different. Some Vorkans were found alone. Others were in small groups. Some were hostile, made wild by trauma and abandonment. Others were simply waiting, as if they had always believed someone would come for them. Rex was important in every rescue. He would approach his fellow Vorkans, communicate in ways that went beyond language, and slowly convince them that these strange humans could be trusted. Jake watched him work with both pride and sadness, knowing that every rescue reminded Rex of his own suffering. But something was coming. Jake could feel it in the tension that had begun to fill communications from Frontier Command. Rumor spoke of strange ships appearing at the edges of explored space, vessels that matched no known design. The answer came during a routine stop at Waypoint Station, a massive space platform that served as a meeting point for dozens of species. Commander Helen Price contacted them directly. Her expression was serious on the view screen. "Captain Morrison, we have a situation. A new species has made contact and it's not going well." Jake listened as Helen explained. The newcomers called themselves the Gen Collective. They were a hive-minded species that had been expanding through the outer rim of the galaxy. They were technologically advanced and seemed to view non-collective species as either resources to be absorbed or obstacles to be eliminated. "They've issued an ultimatum to the Confederation," Helen continued. "Submit to assimilation or be considered hostile. We're trying diplomacy, but intelligence suggests they're positioning fleets at key strategic points." "What does this have to do with us?" Jake asked, though he had a bad feeling he already knew. The Gen have expressed particular interest in Vorkans. They see them as potential weapons to be collected and repurposed. There are reports of Gen raiding parties targeting worlds where abandoned Vorkans were located. Jake felt Rex press against his leg. The Vorkan could sense his distress. "They're hunting them." "We need to speed up the rescue operations," Helen said. "And Captain, there's something else. The Confederation is forming a rapid response fleet to counter the Gen threat. They've requested the Wanderer join the effort." "We're an exploration vessel," Jake protested. "We're not equipped for combat." "No, but Rex is. And so are the other Vorkans you've rescued." Helen's expression softened. "I know what I'm asking. But if the Gen start a war, Every Vorkon in the galaxy becomes a target. With Rex's help, we might be able to protect them. After the call ended, Jake sat in his quarters with Rex lying beside him. The Vorkon had grown quieter over the past hour, as if understanding the weight of what was being asked. "I won't force you," Jake said, running his hand through Rex's fur. "You've fought enough wars. You've earned peace." Rex lifted his head and looked at Jake with those penetrating amber eyes. Then he stood, walked to the door, and looked back. The message was clear. Where Jake went, Rex would follow. The crew meeting that evening was tense. Lisa had compiled everything known about the Gen Collective, and it wasn't good news. They were strong warriors with advanced shielding technology and a complete disregard for individual life. "If we join this fleet, we're putting ourselves in danger," Danny said bluntly. "Most of us signed up for exploration, not combat." "I won't order anyone to fight," Jake replied. "But I also can't ignore what's happening. There are still dozens of Vorkans out there who need rescuing, and if the Gen start hunting them actively, we might be their only chance." Michelle spoke up. "I say we help. Rex risked everything to save those Krillians. We can do the same for him and his kind." One by one, the crew voiced their support. Even those who were afraid understood that some things were worth the risk. The Wanderer joined the Confederation fleet at Rally Point Sigma, a fortified station near the disputed border. The fleet was impressive, a mix of human, Krillian, and a dozen other species vessels. But tension ran high. Old enemies were being asked to fight side by side, and trust was hard to find. Jake was surprised when Krell arrived on a Krillian warship called the Spear of Honor. The warrior had been true to his word, dedicating himself to the Vorkan rescue effort. He had even convinced several Krillian commanders to contribute resources to the cause. "Captain Morrison," Krell greeted him formally when they met in the station's conference center. "And Duskrunner, it is good to see you both." Rex moved forward and pressed his head against Krell's chest, a gesture of friendship that had developed over their past meetings. "The situation is dire," Krell said. "The Gen have already attacked 3 frontier colonies. They take prisoners but do not ransom them. Those captured are never seen again." "What did they want?" Jake asked. "Unity," Krell said grimly. "They believe individuality is a weakness, that all consciousness should be joined in their collective. Those who resist are eliminated." The briefing that followed painted a grim picture. The Gen were advancing on multiple fronts, and their technology allowed them to coordinate attacks with perfect precision. Normal tactics were mostly ineffective, but there was a potential weakness. The Gen relied on a network of hub ships that coordinated their collective consciousness. Disable enough hubs and their forces would become disorganized and vulnerable. "The problem is getting close enough," Admiral Marcus Stone explained. He was a grizzled veteran who commanded the human part of the fleet. "Their shields are nearly impenetrable, and they detect our approach long before we're in weapons range." That's when Lisa made her proposal. "What if we don't approach normally? Vorkans were designed for stealth infiltration. They can move through hostile territory undetected and strike at critical targets." All eyes turned to Rex, who stood beside Jake at the conference table. "You're suggesting we use the Vorkans as special forces," Admiral Stone said slowly. "It's risky. We're asking a lot of beings who have already been through hell." "It's their choice," Jake said firmly. "But if they're willing, it might be our best chance." A gathering was arranged. All rescued Vorkans who had joined the fleet were brought together in a large cargo bay. 43 in total. They ranged in size and color, but all bore the scars of abandonment and survival. Rex stood at the front with Jake beside him. Jake spoke simply, using Galactic Standard, which most Vorkans understood. "You've all been betrayed, used and then discarded. No one would blame you for wanting nothing to do with war ever again." He paused, looking at each Vorkan in turn. "But there are others like you still out there, and a new enemy is hunting them. We're asking for your help to stop them, not as weapons or tools, but as warriors choosing to fight for those who can't fight for themselves." Rex stepped forward and began to speak in the complex language of growls, body movements and gestures that Vorkans used among themselves. Jake couldn't understand the words, but he understood the emotion. Rex was asking them to trust, to believe that this time could be different. The Vorkans talked among themselves for nearly an hour. Finally, an older Vorkan with gray-streaked fur stepped forward. She made a series of gestures that Rex translated through a portable computer they had set up. "We fight, not for humans or Krillians. We fight for Pack, for family, for those still lost. The decision was unanimous. Training began immediately. Human Special Forces instructors worked with the Vorkans, teaching them to use modern equipment and coordinate with non-Vorkan teams. Krell brought Krillian tactical experts who knew Vorkan capabilities best. But the most important lessons came from the Vorkans themselves. They taught the humans about pack tactics, about moving through hostile territory like shadows, about communication that didn't require words or technology that could be intercepted. Jake watched Rex transform during these sessions. The gentle companion became a focused warrior, teaching younger Vorkans the skills that had kept him alive during the war. But every night Rex would return to Jake's quarters, curl up on the floor and let Jake remind him that he was more than a soldier. "You're still my friend first," Jake would say, scratching behind Rex's ears, "no matter what happens." 2 weeks after training began, the Gen made their move. A massive fleet appeared at the edge of the Kepler system, home to a human colony of 50,000 people. The Confederation fleet scrambled to respond, but they would arrive hours after the Gen unless someone could slow them down. "This is it," Admiral Stone said during the emergency briefing. "If we can disable their hub ships, we can buy time for the evacuation and give our fleet a fighting chance." Jake looked at Rex, who nodded once. The Vorkan was ready. The mission was called Operation Shadowfang. 12 Vorkans, including Rex, would be inserted via stealth pods near the Gen fleet. Their objective was to infiltrate the 3 largest hub ships and disable their collective coordination nodes. The human crews who would pilot the stealth pods and provide support were volunteers. Jake insisted on piloting Rex's pod himself, with Lisa as his co-pilot. Danny and Michelle would support 2 other Vorkan teams. The night before the mission, the crew gathered for a quiet dinner. The stealth pods drifted through space like ghosts, their emissions reduced to almost nothing. Jake watched the sensor displays as the Gen fleet grew larger on the screen. Hundreds of ships moved in perfect synchronization. It was beautiful in a terrible way, like watching insects move as one organism. Rex lay coiled in the pod's cargo section, his body relaxed but alert. Through the transparent partition, Jake could see the Vorkan's eyes reflecting the dim console lights. They had been traveling for 3 hours now, and the insertion point was coming up fast. "Reading the hub ships now," Lisa whispered, though there was no one to hear them in the void. 3 massive vessels in the center of the formation, just like intelligence predicted. Each one is twice the size of anything else in their fleet. Jake studied the tactical display. The hub ships were protected by layers of smaller vessels, but there were gaps in the coverage. Spaces where the Gen's perfect coordination created blind spots. The Vorkans had identified these weaknesses during planning, points where natural intuition could exploit mathematical precision. "All teams report ready," came Admiral Stone's voice through the encrypted channel. "Wanderer team, you're clear for insertion in 2 minutes." Jake took a deep breath. "Copy that." "Rex, you ready, buddy?" The Vorkan rose and moved to the deployment door, his movements smooth despite the tight space. In the low light, his cybernetic implants pulsed with a soft glow. The Krillians had designed those systems for war, but they also contained advanced sensors and communication arrays that would prove valuable in the mission ahead. The pod shuddered as it released its payload, Rex, wearing a specially designed infiltration suit that provided life support and stealth capabilities, drifted toward the Gen fleet. 3 other Vorkans from different pods joined him, moving like shadows against the star field. Jake watched on his sensors as Rex and his team approached the nearest hub ship. The Gen vessel was enormous, its hull covered in strange organic-looking structures that pulsed with bioluminescent light. It looked more grown than built. "They're inside," Lisa reported, her voice tight with tension. "Life signs stable. The Gen haven't detected them yet." The waiting was the hardest part. Jake sat in the pilot's seat, his hands gripping the controls, ready to extract Rex at a moment's notice. Minutes crawled by like hours. Then Rex's signal came through, a simple pulse that meant they had reached the first objective. The coordination node was located deep inside the hub ship, in what the Vorkans had identified as the central processing chamber. On Jake's tactical display, he saw other Vorkan teams making progress on the other 2 hub ships. Everything was going according to plan. Too well, Jake thought with growing unease. His instinct proved right. Alarm suddenly screamed across the Gen fleet. The perfect formation began to shift as ships moved to investigate breaches on all 3 hub vessels. "They know," Lisa said urgently. Captain, we need to extract now. Not yet, Jake said through gritted teeth. They need more time to complete the mission. Inside the hub ship, Rex and his team moved fast. The interior was like nothing Jake had seen in the transmitted video feeds. Walls pulsed with living tissue. Corridors twisted in impossible geometries. And everywhere, gen drones moved with mechanical precision, searching for the intruders. Rex used every skill he had learned in the Krillian Wars. He moved through shadows, his black fur making him nearly invisible in the dim corridors. When gen drones got too close, he disabled them with quick, silent strikes that his cybernetic enhancements made possible. But the resistance was growing. More drones poured into the corridors. The hub ship was waking up, recognizing the threat inside it. Captain, multiple gen fighters are breaking formation, Lisa warned. They're heading for the stealth pods. Jake made a split-second decision. All pods begin evasive maneuvers. We need to draw their attention away from the Vorkons. The stealth pods lit up their engines, abandoning their hidden positions. Gen fighters swarmed toward them like angry hornets. Jake threw the pod into a hard turn, barely avoiding a blast of energy that turned space where they had been into superheated plasma. Hang on, Jake shouted to Lisa as he pushed the pod to its limits. The small craft wasn't built for combat, but it was nimble. He wove through the gen formation, using larger ships as cover, buying precious seconds for Rex and the others. Inside the hub ship, Rex finally reached the coordination node. It was a massive chamber filled with pulsing organic technology. At the center, a crystalline structure hummed with power, its surfaces covered in constantly shifting patterns of light. Rex understood what he had to do. The other Vorkans with him took defensive positions at the chamber's entrances, holding back the growing number of gen drones. Rex approached the crystal, his cybernetic implants interfacing with the alien technology. The connection was instant and overwhelming. For a brief moment, Rex felt the vast consciousness of the gen collective, billions of minds thinking as one. It was beautiful and horrible at the same time. He understood their desire for unity, but also saw the terrible cost. Every individual absorbed into the collective lost their self, their dreams, their ability to choose. Rex thought of Jake, of the crew of the Wanderer, of all the beings who had shown him kindness when they could have simply used him. He thought about choice, about the freedom to trust or not trust, to love or not love. That freedom was what made life worth living. With a surge of will channeled through his implants, Rex disrupted the coordination node. The crystal shattered and the hub ship screamed. Outside, Jake saw the effect immediately. The Gen fleet's perfect formation collapsed into chaos. Ships began to drift or collide as the collective consciousness that guided them fragmented. "It's working," Lisa shouted with joy. All three hub ships are going dark. The Gen are in complete disarray, but the victory came at a price. The hub ship Rex was on began to tear itself apart. Emergency systems activated, trying to contain the damage, but it was too late. The massive vessel was dying. "Rex, get out of there," Jake yelled into the communicator. "The ship is breaking up. You need to evacuate now." Rex and his team ran through the collapsing corridors. Walls buckled and twisted. Atmosphere vented through widening cracks. Gen drones, their coordination lost, wandered aimlessly or attacked each other in confusion. They made it to the extraction point just as a massive explosion tore through the ship's core. Rex leaped through the airlock into open space, his infiltration suit's thrusters firing to push him away from the dying vessel. Jake brought the pod around in a hard burn, ignoring the Gen fighters that were too disorganized to coordinate their attacks. He matched velocity with Rex, and the Vorkan grabbed onto the pod's external grips. "I've got you, buddy," Jake said, his heart pounding. "Hang on." The pod accelerated away from the Gen fleet as the three hub ships exploded in sequence, their destruction creating shockwaves that scattered the already chaotic enemy formation. The Confederation fleet arrived minutes later to find the Gen forces in complete disarray. Without their hub ships to coordinate them, the individual vessels were no match for the combined forces of humans, Krillians, and their allies. The battle was short and decisive. Hours later, back on the Wanderer, Jake sat with Rex in the medical bay. Pete was checking the Vorkan over for injuries, but Rex had come through remarkably well. A few bruises, some minor burns from the explosions, but nothing serious. "You did it," Jake said, his hand resting on Rex's shoulder. "You saved 50,000 people today. You're a hero." Rex made a soft sound and pressed his head against Jake's chest. The Vorkan didn't want to be called a hero. He had simply done what was necessary to protect his pack, his family. The victory over the Gen had far-reaching consequences. The collective, broken and scattered, retreated back to their home systems. The threat was not eliminated entirely, but it was contained. And more importantly, the successful cooperation between multiple species in defending against the Gen created a new framework for peace and mutual support. Krell arrived on the Wanderer the day after the battle. The Krillian warrior found Jake and Rex on the observation deck watching the stars. "The Council has made a decision," Krell said. "All Vorkans are to be granted full citizenship in Krillian space if they choose to return. They will no longer be considered property or weapons. They are people with all the rights that entails." Jake looked at Rex. "What do you want to do, buddy? Do you want to go back?" Rex looked at Krell for a long moment. There was history there, pain, but also respect. Then the Vorkan turned back to Jake and the stars beyond. His choice was clear. "He wishes to stay with you," Krell said, understanding. "I do not blame him. You gave him something we never did. You gave him freedom to choose." Over the following weeks, the rescued Vorkans made their own choices. Some returned to Krillian space to help rebuild and to teach their former masters about respect and equality. Others found new homes among the stars with various species who had learned to see them as individuals. But many, like Rex, chose to stay with the humans who had rescued them. They became explorers, scientists, teachers, and friends. They proved that beings created for war could choose peace, that loyalty earned was stronger than loyalty commanded. The Wanderer returned to its original mission of exploration, but now with